The Philippines is quietly becoming the stablecoin market in Southeast Asia, and most of the world doesn't know about it yet. Here we have today two people in the room who are actually building in this market, from the exchange layer to the payments infrastructure. We are going to ask them what is working, what needs to be fixing, and what's going to happen next. I am Michael Mislos, the Editor-in-Chief of BitPinas. Thank you guys for joining us here. I would like to start this with an introduction. What are you guys doing in the context of our discussion today?
Thanks, Michael, and thanks to the BitPinas team as well. I'm Alvin Wong. I lead the business development for emerging business. This covers everything on crypto, investments, insurance, international remittance, and international expansion in some sorts as well. So that's kind of the focus thinking of from a business expansion point of view. But I think on stablecoins, it's something that we've already started since 2022 that we supported. But obviously, the industry activity is picking up in recent years. I think since the tail end of 2 years ago, it started to be a bit easier to talk about that.
Great. First of all, Michael, nice to meet you guys. Great to be here in the Philippines. My name is David. I'm David Hsiao, the CMO at Morph. What we're doing at Morph is we're building the payments first settlement layer. We recently launched a $150 million payment accelerator, which is one of our core initiatives right now, supporting businesses, real businesses with payments volume and transaction volume looking to go on chain, or looking to start to take advantage of the benefits of going on chain. Another area that we've been working very focusing on lately is stablecoin infrastructure. So stablecoin infrastructure is a big topic of discussion these days, particularly here in the Philippines, right? I think the Philippines is an area that can stand very much to benefit from a lot of things we're doing, and looking forward to talking about it today.
Thank you so much for the introduction. You guys are working in the most interesting crypto market in the world. At this point, that's what I think. With what's happening here in Southeast Asia, especially here in the Philippines, what do you think the rest of the world doesn't know about yet, about what's happening here?
I'll start with my personal feelings towards personal perspective of what I see in the Philippines. I think the Philippines has always been no stranger to digital finance or the internet forward economy. We saw it in Axie Affinity when the play-to-earn era started here. The Philippine market was a very, very early adopter. The market understood the mechanics of play-to-earn very quickly, picked it up and sought and created value from that, right? Remittances is another huge part of the Philippines market where it's very interesting to Morph at this very moment. I'll talk about regulation in a bit, but in terms of market size itself, remittances are so interesting because Philippines ranks number 4 in the world as a remittance quarter. About $35 billion a year goes through to the Philippines. And this is astounding to me because you compare Philippines in terms of population size, we're about number 14 in the world, right? But it only falls behind India, China, and Mexico in terms of remittance size. That is an incredible figure to me, where it kind of ties into the internet culture and also the hustler culture, I feel. People in the Philippines are looking for ways to be able to create value outside of their existing physical limitations. And I think that's something that I see very specific to the Philippine market, the Philippines culture, and also just the tech culture here, which is something certainly very exciting. From a regulation standpoint, it seems to be very supportive here with the BSP, the virtual assets service provider here, those licenses. I think the government and regulation has been very supportive here, and I think what's lacking is really just interoperability and education and just more use, and I think we're going to get there.
Kind of agree with, especially when it comes to, when you said about Axie Infinity, it kind of took them very few days to figure out how to do the MetaMask thing, how to transfer it to an exchange and to cash out, whereas it took quite some time, I believe, for fintech, for Gcash, for Maya to have those numbers that you guys have now. So my question to you is, as with David here, what do you think is happening here that the world doesn't know about yet?
I think I agree on all the points that David had mentioned, specifically whether in regulatory compliance. I mean, definitely throughout COVID, we've grown our numbers digitally, so much so that every other Filipino in the Philippines has a digital wallet. I would like to think some of that transformation came because of digital first. The case in point, we're also a digital bank, so we're also there from that particular segment, from a bank segment point of view. Definitely cross-border and remittances are an important part and facet of a lot of the GDP in the Philippines, where remittances get sent back home. But I would argue that the fact that we had a bedrock of very successful and stabilized and well-regulated digital infrastructure helps to set the stage for interconnectivity or interoperability with the rest of the world in terms of stablecoins. I think the role that I see that coming on is that we already have a successful stack on that. I mean, Maya is also a VASP, so we're a virtual asset service provider. And through that, other companies and partners will be able to send us stablecoins through remittances, where we can use our license to convert stablecoins to crypto or vice versa. And that can help another channel to be able to send value very quickly versus traditional, whether you're talking about SWIFT disruption or other remittance companies sending. So I think that tide is kind of changing, and that narrative is changing, especially since last year, where it used to be hard to talk to them about sending value to us, and now everybody's like, oh, we are looking for a partner who's a VASP so that we can send you stablecoin. But obviously, if you take a look at the macro environment, all comes from a lot of the regulations that start from the US, being able to recognize that. So Genius Act, etc., has been super helpful, I think, in our industry to supercharge a lot of these discussions so that it becomes more clearer for all institutions to be able to bring more of the existing flows. I would say that the role that we see ourselves playing is being able to bring real world flows today that already pass through us as a company into stable coins. So unlike others where you need to create new value, new services, we are already at the intersection of all of them, be it banking, wallet, VASP. Now the question is how to shift those volumes, which are real world, into stable coins, and that is happening slowly but surely. So it's interesting times as well.
Just to add on to something what Alvin just said about what we're already doing, what Maya's already doing, I think that's sort of exactly why we see such a big opportunity, particularly in the Philippines market here, where what I was just saying about how it's already a very internet forward economy, very digital forward, and very early adopter, quickly adopting too, where I think the Philippine market can very quickly and immediately stand independent from whether it be going on chain or just entering this direction, right?
Actually, it sounds to me, as Alvin mentioned, that the people on top already understands this. The infrastructure is ready, just the interoperability is the one that is in question at the moment. Would like to ask, what do you think is still broken? Because when you go to the actual user at this point, someone from other country sending their money, they will still, for some reason, they will still prepare a bank transfer. The one that takes 3 days, 3 to 5 days, depending on the holidays. What do you think is still broken at this point that needs to be fixed?
I can go first. I think what is missing, what is happening right now is the plumbing, which is between sender and receiver. We are actually transiting to using stablecoin flows under the hood. Whether the sending party is aware or cares about it, that's happening. That transitioning is happening fast. I think what needs to happen better, and this could be powered by the like of what Morph is doing in terms of working with partners, with the fund that you guys had mentioned, to bring more of this education, incentives on the sending side. Because I think it takes two hands to clap. It's not just the sending and receiver, but also the person who earns the income overseas. So like, for example, someone in the US who makes money there for a living and wants to decide which channel to send back, they need to also be aware that there's another channel that potentially they should try for the first time and be able to get some incentives to try and see whether they find it better and more convenient than the current way that they're doing it. I think that needs to happen. Obviously, on our side, where we represent more on the receiving side, we can work on educating the receiving and making it super simple and easy to use and secure for them to quickly receive a stablecoin into fiat, or maybe you can also extend to paying off their bills first, etc., before you get the flow of funds in. So these things still need to happen in a larger scale for it to grow momentum. But definitely, I think for a pure B2B, whether it's an aggregator sending to us or remittance company sending to us on the B2B side, that is happening in a large scale today.
All right. Thank you so much, Alvin. How about you, David?
Totally agree. Great answer there. So when we look at the problems still existing, there's still the typical ones of speed, too slow, right? Cost, too expensive for fees, whether it be FX fees, swapping fees, just transaction fees. Also, capital efficiency, right? When money is parked, the traditional financial system, it loses value when it's parked, it's not efficient. All these things hurt the user at the end of the day. It hurts businesses, hurts users, and it hurts economic power, right? So where can we improve here? I think one thing I see is interoperability. Interoperability is a big issue right now, where you have siloed issuance, service providers, merchants, payment checkout, where all of this is still not connected into a seamless system, where that affects the user at the end of the day. Just an example, I was at BDO Bank today trying to exchange some money. I didn't bring my passport, so I couldn't exchange. Then I asked, how could an American open a bank account here? Can't open, needs to be 6 months, I believe. So now I'm stuck with the pesos, can't spend it here, and my card, can't use it somewhere. So these are very real issues that, sure, it's from just a personal travel, but these issues extend to businesses, right? This extend to the Filipino worker working in the United States, sending money home to the Philippines. On average, for example, I believe right now in the US, the average Filipino worker sends maybe $3,000 to $5,000 back to the Philippines every year, $300 to $500 per month. The current fees range anywhere from an average of 6%, 7%, and that can be quite significant over a year. It really can be, right? That's the difference between making an upgrade to your home or not. It's the difference between whether your child gets medicine or not, right? I think these are where the problems still lie, and interoperability, once we get out of these silos and start connecting all these providers, that's when the user experience will get better, and that's where I think the real economic power will come from.
David and Alvin, at least on the user side, what I still see that still doesn't work is that when I wanted to transfer USDC on else, the other person needs to tell me like this is the address for USDC Ethereum or USDT Tron, etc. Somehow that particular thing, is that even solved already? I think that's still a problem at the moment, at least on the retail side. Now, I wanted to touch now on the regulation side. I believe you guys are very much aware of the regulations globally, for sure. I wanted to know how these regulations on the markets that you are starting or building affects how you push your product or your services. We start with David.
Sure thing. So as I said, I think the BSP has been, relatively to many other nations, has been extremely supportive of digital finance and crypto, Web3 culture, Web3 technology, and just the benefits that they can bring. It seems like regulatory authorities here seem to recognize the benefits of that. On top of that, the BSPs, as Alvin had mentioned, I think what they've done just shows the direction of where they're thinking ahead. And I think the government here seems to see many of the benefits, particularly with remittances, right? I think I'm certain that that's an area that they're looking to target too. Just to add on to what Alvin mentioned earlier about, and also to answer your question about what you were discussing about the problems when it comes to stablecoins and using crypto right now. Alvin mentioned the word invisibility, right? Where from Maya's perspective, it's your job to make it so that the user might not have to understand this technology where it's seamless to use. I think at the same time, of course, that's what Morph and our team and organization is trying to do at the same time from the on-chain side. I think for your question on regulation, it'd be good to have some clear direction on laws around interoperability, around law regulation, around the many different areas of this whole infrastructure. And I think that would certainly help with eventually better user experience and rewards and benefits to users.
Thank you so much, David, on that end. Correct me if I'm wrong. So since you are at the settlement layer of the payments, do they need the BASP for that particular service or not, Alvin?
I think because we are also a BASP, we work together with the DSP hand in hand to make sure that we collect information. I think we call it the travel rule. Well, basically first name, last name, and additional information. I think we're probably one of the most forward-looking in the sense that we have introduced that even below 50,000 pesos. I think we are also rolling out our receive feature pretty soon. So we look forward to bringing back some of these flows into Maya itself. But in general, I think if you look at the likes of Hong Kong and Singapore, other counterparties in the region, all of them follow a certain set of rule sets whereby we talk about certain requirements from whether it's MAS, Hong Kong MA, DSP, to ensure that we collect some sort of information about the person who is actually sending over the funds before allowing us to scan. So there are a few layers, right? We would actually pull the information and look at the counterparty. We also evaluate the transaction link in terms of any particular risk in how many hops before the chain itself, and then we also do section screening. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we as infrastructure providers do in order for that simplistic transaction that comes from cross-border that comes in. Obviously, this is a big change from, I would say, the Wild West many years ago when anybody could send to anybody. I think the best thing about mass acceptance is the fact that anybody can send to anybody, but let's just say it passes through some gates to qualify that before we agree based on certain risk-based rule sets and thresholds that we have to set as infrastructure provider before letting you come in. It also helps that we submit the transactions to BSP as we are required to do from a reporting angle. So you can see that it's not a Philippines thing. It's a regional thing, it's a global thing. We all abide by FATF guidelines. I think there are certain jurisdictions which are a bit slower. I think Nika is coming well from a lot of the players that we talk about. I think US is still kind of a bit behind in that sense. But I think in generally for most of our peers in the region, you would say that all of them are kind of aligned to it. So I would say it's regulated parties talking in a compliant way to make sure that in order for us to send transactions over to each other, we know and abide by such rules so that this is how it should properly be captured, so that we answer all of the regulatory requirements. Obviously, the other side of the coin that people ask, people use crypto for other purposes. But this is also the reason why we work on the AML side to be able to dissuade it. In fact, I would say that because we have much more clarity on the blockchain about where they are and where they come from versus other fiat channels, and these are open as well, you would argue that the auditability part of this is very transparent. Obviously, it doesn't mean that there's no work to be done. I'm just saying that we are floating the question mark about where are the origin and where they have come from to a layer where regulators or anyone are able to look and view the transactions and figure out why and how, right, from an investigative standpoint. So overall, the ecosystem is coming along, and I think that generates confidence. And when you have confidence, institutions will move because they feel that now, especially in 2026, it's a bit more mainstream now. So I would say the crypto is sort of getting more mainstream. It's unlike the older days where people have a lot of questions, are a bit cautious. Now, because they know that we as market players are doing the right thing and collecting the right information and reporting as well, they know it's not that simple to get around as in the past, I would say.
I see. What you're actually saying is that at least on the blockchain, the regulator actually have an incentive to accept blockchain as part of this because it's actually easier for them to trail these things, right?
I was going to say, it's refreshing to hear somebody say crypto is being more transparent than fiat for once. Just a few years ago, it was completely opposite, other way around, right? But it's good that people are starting to recognize the technical benefits of crypto, of going on-chain, of the transparency. Glad you mentioned that.
Now, I wanted to talk about the infrastructure layer. So this is for you, David. What do you think needs to exist at the infra level so that stablecoin settlements will actually work at scale?
Great question. So I think on the infra level, there needs to be 5 layers sort of working together to align together for all this to work. First, you mentioned the stablecoin issuance. You need the actual issuer, whether USDC, USDT, a regulated issuer issuing with the actual product and assets so that people, users, or businesses know that it's pegged to the dollar. This is a simple sentence, but it's such an important thing, right? Being pegged to the dollar, knowing that it's regulated, very important. Second of all is the on and off ramps, right? There needs to be a way for people to connect fiat, users connect fiat to the on-chain world. So on and off ramps, certainly another important part of the layer. The tech layer, developers and SDKs, APIs, providing developers with these resources to be able to build these applications and products for people to use. There's an area of established businesses looking to go on-chain. There's also a huge cohort of developers looking for ways to be able to use this amazing technology, right? And then of course there's Morph, the settlement layer. A settlement layer where all this above works on, right? And then lastly, compliance. Alvin already touched on this, but KYC, AML, all this is very important layer in infrastructure where it's needed to work, it's needed for people to trust, and also for nations to trust to be able to use it too, right? So yeah, I would say that's the five layers that sort of contribute to the infrastructure needed here.
I see. Thank you so much, David. From those 5, is there anything that hasn't been built yet, that doesn't exist yet?
I think we do see an evolution of the role that stablecoin issuers are coming up with. I think namely on Circle side, the Circle payment network. I think even on the custody side of things, you can see what is happening in the industry. I think the ones who are the issuers are uniting and making it easy to solve the problem of how do you find the other counterparties on the other side of the world. I mean, obviously, you can set up many LinkedIn messages and get connected to many people. That's the harder way. Or you can actually, it's kind of like a yellow pages where you say that, hey, If you want to send to anyone in the Philippines, send to Maya. We are well-regulated digital bank, and that gives you assurance and security, and send it to us. I think more and more you will see a lot of this discoverability happen to solve that. Obviously, it doesn't mean that you don't need to sign a contract with the other party and all that as well. So that still needs to be done. I think what we're trying to cut through is if you have a strategy towards a certain corridor and you don't know how to look and who to look for, then I think some of these initiatives are trying to solve for that, to make it more discoverable. I think from us, our point of view is that we will continue to work on counterparties by way of introduction, maybe from other parties as well, who say that, hey, they want to send stablecoins to Philippines rather than send to Maya. I think that part will always exist. But the path to make it more open and more easy discoverable, it kind of boils back to, I used to cover a payment scheme, and it feels a bit like a payment scheme coming together, uniting issuers and acquirers in a whole network of things, whereby you're actually making it easy for each party to send to each other. I think over time, that is kind of where, in order for the industry to succeed, this kind of industry communities, or so-called networks, to be built, and arrangements, make it easier to solve for that. I think it will accelerate a bit more, but I don't think we are 100% there yet. There are a few companies and exchanges who have been participating and make our life easier. But certainly we think that there will be much more of this that's required in order for that to mushroom, and eventually it will be as easy as just click a button and okay, I can send to my. I think that will be that's going to happen this year, next year onwards. I think we are trying to do our part to solve for that as well. But I think that industry evolution will be what is required to get to the next stage to scale.
I see. Actually, it leads to my next question, that if the infrastructure gets built in the way that you're hoping, what is life like for the regular Filipino or the regular person in Southeast Asia in 3 years? Not in the next years, but in year 3, how does it look like? What is possible by that time that you think is not possible today if the infrastructure that you are hoping could get built? David?
I think if everything we've been discussing today realizes and becomes a reality, like the utopia we envision here, I like to answer with the one word that Alvin used, I guess, invisibility.
Okay.
I think invisibility is a key word, how I see this tech evolving forward, where the users shouldn't have to understand this tech at all. It should be seamless within their daily lives, and they should immediately just feel the real economic benefits of this technology, right? Whether it be in savings, whether it be in speed, whether it be in convenience, where you don't have to go out to your bank to grab a check to pay for something anymore. You can just do this from your mobile phone. This world I see, I don't know if it'll happen in 3 years, but I'm quite certain and confident what Alvin was just talking about with the interoperability between issuers and possibly Maya, right? It's incredibly exciting for me to see that from every angle, whether you're from the issuers doing remittances, your exchanges, or you're a settlement layer, we all seem to be heading towards the same direction and the same goals here, where better value for users, cutting down on these unnecessary issues that exist from legacy technology. Yeah, so this is, I think, invisibility and just a seamless world where this tech just works is where I see it. Maybe not in 3 years, but certainly in my lifetime.
So invisibility, meaning people doesn't know that it is happening via stablecoins. It just works.
Yeah, so I'd also like to add, I think in a few years when this entire infrastructure is more set up, I think it'll open a world of opportunities for developers and builders in businesses, whether it be small businesses or established businesses, to really not only ramp up in user experience, but really just revenue and saving on costs too. It's a massive opportunity, particularly in the Philippines here. I can't understate that. If we just look at remittances itself, I think that's enough of a market to really tackle in itself. I'm sure Maya's certainly looking at that area too.
Well, I think since last year to this year has been a very transformational year, where regulatory climate makes it a bit more easy for everybody to get on board. I think for remittances, what we see is a displacement of value that goes from US dollar into stable coins. And to be honest, US dollar coming into Philippines is nothing new. It's just a shift of the channel into another way that is faster. It solves for weekends. It's 24/7, always on. It works even when banks are not operating beyond Friday. That's how bank days are. So I think there's a natural disruption there to move that. But in effect, we're not creating anything new. We're actually just creating a more efficient way to move US dollar, originating flow of funds into the Philippines that solves the problem about that most companies have over the weekend. You just make it faster. And when you can do instantaneous settlement and solve that, then there is excess liquidity over here, because instead of your money being parked aside and you don't get that money after T plus X days, you immediately get the value to be able to redeploy the funds to grow your business. So that's an important reason for enterprises, right?
Yeah.
So I think I will answer the remittance part in that. I think on the user side of things, what we are trying to do is to make it super simple for the problem that David had, visitors who come here and they don't have access, or sometimes their cards don't work, to see maybe it's possible for your own stablecoin to be used as a form of payment over in the Philippines itself. But that will probably answer immediately the tourist segment, right? Over time, you also need to see whether is that a big problem enough for the local population to try to use. I think for those who are crypto native, it's a no-brainer. But for the masses who already use wallets like us, it's a question mark. But I think over time, it becomes that if you have multiple sources of funds and investments, then it's really about you having the flexibility and capability to tap into what you own. So, for example, if I own stablecoins, why am I not allowed to use them? Right? Or if I have Bitcoin, maybe I want to convert that to a stablecoin and use that as a source of funds if I don't want to dip into my bank account or wallet itself. So I think we think about it this way, that every user has the freedom, unlocking them and being able to cross through the ecosystem seamlessly. I think that's what we believe in. The third part, which I will think, is that in 3 years' time, the users that we serve will be fundamentally quite different. It will not be just normal you and me users, but could be intelligent assistants. I think we've already seen that evolution right now for a lot of crypto native companies exposing their current stack to be utilized and picked up by AI agents seamlessly. It could just be just as simple as saying that I want to pay this company, and they managed to figure out and latch on to a way to pay in the Philippines. And obviously stablecoins are kind of universal, and we are playing a role to make it seamlessly acceptable cross-border point of view. So I think what's going to happen is that everybody will see a shift to being able to pay online just because it works across globally, and that's the convenience factor that it brings. And it becomes a very liquid mechanism where there are a lot of different parties and merchants and receiving parties that accept it. But the originating party that actually transacts and spends might not be human beings, might be human beings triggering agents to actually spend. And you see that happening with some of these services being exposed already by exchanges. So I think that evolution will come pretty soon in the next 3 years. And I think, as I said, the next user might not be a human being, might be an agent that you can give a simple command to and they will figure out the complexity. It's as simple as that, I think.
David, would you like to add on that one?
Absolutely.
You mentioned about the AI making the
absolutely.
user.
We can talk about automated or agentic payments. Absolutely, it's something we're very much looking at Morph currently. It's a lot of hot topic, obviously. First, I would love to address what you said about. I love what you said about a lot of this is things we're already doing, right? Cutting down on costs, making things faster. New tech is often, it often comes into the scene that way, and it might not be used or understood amongst different parties until it reaches a clicking point where it all just comes together. I like to use the example of GPS technology, right? GPS was invented back in the 1970s or so by the U.S. military, just for military purposes. It wasn't until maybe in the 90s and early 2000s when the mobile phone internet started coming out, where now we see GPS technology used in every day of our daily lives, whether it be with calling a Grab car, swiping on Tinder to see dates nearby. It really is just a seamless part of everyday life. And what Alvin just said about that really made me think about that, because that's sort of the invisibility, I think, the future we're looking towards, where one day, maybe right now, people can't see all the benefits of stablecoins. They might not be able to understand all the angles, but one day when, issuance, compliance comes together, service providers come together, there will be a point where it all clicks and developers will have the resources and opportunities to start building these amazing products. On agentic payments, absolutely. Currently, I can't remember the exact statistic, but something like a large portion of stablecoins and transactions are already done through agents. And I think this is only going to get exponentially more in terms of quantity of transactions, volume and size of the transactions. And to be frank, we're still trying to figure out ways ourselves. How can we experiment with this technology? How can we integrate it? But yeah, certainly an interesting topic. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. How is Maya doing anything with the agentic payment side?
There are things that are very interesting that we have looked at in totality in terms of the evolution of technology. I think this year has been a bit different in the sense that we see more and more of this other companies rolling out. But even as far back as last year when you saw that Google and Stripe were all involved in agentic payments, and obviously Visa and MasterCard were also involved, that this is the start of something big, and these are large networks with large users and large connectivity, connecting to entities like us as well. I think these companies are playing a role to make that happen. I think for us there are two parts which will happen. One is the partners that you're connected to, the other are the users that we serve. I don't think we have seen phenomenal change in terms of the user side yet. I think we're just at the start of that cycle. I think the institutional side in terms of seeding merchants and having alternatives, making it more discoverable, is starting to happen in terms of the thinking, the process, and building towards it. Of course, the building climate is kind of different from a coding standpoint, whereby humans don't necessarily need to know how to code, as in you can ask AI agents to code for you. So obviously, AI engines understand all this complexity, right? So you probably reach a stage whereby the first thing that the AI wants to code is to connect to it, because it makes it easier for them to actually execute. So I think that will happen, but I think there's still room for improvement on regulatory supervision, and obviously we are already regulated. The question is, the next batch of users, how do you make it a safer climate for everyone, while ensuring that we don't fall foul into the darker side of what we are defending against, which is on the AML side, right? So I think that needs to come, and I'm sure it will come in topics raised by all the other regulatory agencies. But I think I'm bullish for the future. I can see that already happening. I think maybe the most important question is, are we the user interface, or is the user interface the one that's used by most people?
I see.
That would be the golden question I would ask.
All right. I mean, thank you so much. This has been very insightful. I would love to close this conversation with you guys with one question. What is the one move that either the government or the industry or the community, the users, could do? What is the one move that they could do that you think could drastically change everything, for example, for the Philippines or for the region here in Southeast Asia? And if there's anything that you would like to add that otherwise you have not mentioned. For me, really, the one thing that I was hoping, since covering this space for the last 8 years, 9 years already, is kind of a standardization of the regulation between all the regulators here. Because we read about, report about them, you kind of see that there's still something that is not similar for the regulators here. But so I'm hoping that at some point it could happen, a standard crypto regulation here. The US moving forward to that. I think there was a recent news about the SEC there and the CFTC in the US trying to harmonize their crypto regulations. So that's what I hope here. How about you guys? The one thing that the government, the industry, or the community can do that could drastically change everything now? David?
Sure, absolutely. I think, like I mentioned before, government clarity and clarity around the situation is absolutely the most important thing the government can provide here. Without clarity, it deters builders, it deters businesses from entering this arena or wanting to understand it more. And certainly there's a lot of economic deterrences when the government is unclear. I think more clarity will lead to not only more participants, but also more interoperability, and that will lead to the entire infrastructure being much more well-rounded for the users, for the nation, and for just businesses and everyone in general.
All right, thank you so much, David. How about you, Alvin?
I think we are a market player where we are looking to make it easy for inflow of funds into the Philippines. Obviously, I think, as you know, historically, it's more inwards coming rather than outward going. I think with all the agencies, it's also to ensure that our hard-earned effort to bring in more capital into the country doesn't go out the other way, and that's what we certainly believe in. But we also believe in making it easy for low-value transactions and make it super simple to execute. Just like how you would pay with a contactless card and you just tap and pay to a certain amount. I think if that can be applied on stablecoins specifically, that would greatly help the industry. Because at the end of the day, we are bringing in flow of funds inwards to the country, where regulated parties still submit transactions, we still pay our taxes, and we make it a lot easier for the transaction, to make it easy to process end to end. So I think that probably is a discussion that is good to happen, and I believe because of my own involvement in low value payment, be it on the transit, on transaction, on contactless, I feel that that part is still something that needs to happen in order to make it easier for more people to transact and bring more funds incoming. So if you can solve for that problem as an ecosystem effort, that would really help to scale it up. But I would say that this year we are thinking of to play a better and bigger role to help in that. Can't say too much right now, but I think watch out for our space, I suppose.
All right. Thank you so much to our guests, Alvin of Maya and David from Morph. This is Michael Mislos, the editor-in-chief of BitPinas. See you on the next episode of the BitPinas Interviews on the Record. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.